one of the first things that I would have done is get myself out of the gym. Where so many people go wrong is they overestimate what they can do in 1 month with weight loss, but underestimate where they can be in 1 year. Definitely, I'd commit to that period of sacrifice, and I'd be okay with that. I'd get away from the instant gratification. I'd stop using food to feel good. So a strange little question that I was asked recently, Ryan, what would you do if you were overweight right now, but knew everything that you currently know? If you had to start from scratch, what steps would you take? I thought, what a great little question to answer here on my YouTube channel. So we're going to take Ryan Adams back 4, 5, 6 years ago when he was struggling with the scale, had little wins here and there, but never really broke through. Never really did I get a hold of my weight issues back then, my food problems, so on and so forth. What would I do? I think by far and away, the first thing I would address is my thinking. I want to get my mind right. I'd want to get my mind right. It was so toxic. It was corrupting my thoughts, my actions. A great analogy for this, it's almost like the iceberg analogy, but great analogy for this is you can imagine your actions, your habits as a tree. You've got your trunk there, you've got the branches, the leaves, the fruit that it's bearing, so on and so forth. But underground is where most of the length and volume of the tree is in terms of the roots. Those roots go down deep and they go wide. And you can really equate this to your thinking, your thoughts, your stories, your identity, your belief system. It's all underground. It's almost hidden. In my new book, I refer to them as these invisible forces. But what they do is really drive your actions above ground. They drive your execution on those good daily habits, the discipline, so on and so forth. So my first port of call would be to address my thinking. My mind was so bad for weight loss in many ways. One of the biggest things I was doing wrong was I had this really this is what so many people do, short-termist mindset. I was looking to lose 5 pounds by a certain day. I was looking to be a certain way or have a certain physique by graduation, by this holiday, by Christmas. I set all these little kind of short-term goals for myself without ever playing this kind of more longer-term 6 monthly, 1 year, 2 year game. I was never asking myself, right, where do you want to be in 2 years? And when I started to do that in the summer of 2015, I started to seek out actions and behaviors. I started to take decisions that were far more built with longevity in mind. They were far more sustainable. I wasn't doing this instant gratification thing. I wasn't looking for the immediate results all the time. I wasn't looking for the magic pill to shred down faster. And so, had I have learned that sooner, I have no doubt that I'd been much further ahead in terms of my progress than it's kind of been over the past couple of years. So, yeah, that's definitely something I'd do. I'd steer away from that short-termist thinking and start playing this long-term game where I'm more thinking about health and longevity, vitality as well. And I'm always thinking about weight loss, of course, but really in much more of a, okay, where do I want to be in a year sense? You see, where so many people go wrong is they overestimate what they can do in 1 month with weight loss, but underestimate where they can be in 1 year. Everybody, is playing this short-term, impatient game. And for me, it was driving a set of actions and behaviors that were not only unsustainable, but they didn't allow me to kind of dive deep with the proven strategies for long-lasting weight loss. I was doing all of this short-term stuff all the time. It wasn't sustainable, as I say here. And it was all a bit mindless. It was all out of this urge, this very superficial desire to get the results right now. And it was when I started going deeper with my thoughts, my stories, started caring more about my health and longevity, that ironically I could find the strategies for weight loss that were much more long-term. Didn't mean by any means that they were slow, but they were built with longevity in mind. And then I could go through the identity change, I could develop the new healthy habits with, as you guys know, my nutrition philosophy in 2015, this natural plant foods approach, that really allowed me to see great results. So that's the first thing I would have done. Tip number 2 really, or what should we say, element number 2, I'd most certainly turn my attention to nutrition. I wasted a lot of hours in the gym in my university years when arguably I should have been studying. As you guys know, I had lots of muscle building ambitions back then. And I was indeed, to be fair, able to build some muscle, but with it I got really chunky as well. Chunky Ryan Adams, as I called myself back then. My neck was like a little thumb. My head to neck ratio, I just looked like a thumb. And it was in hindsight, It was awful, but at the time I was so tunnel vision with what I was doing. Some people paid me compliments, oh Ryan, you're getting the gains. And so in terms of that feedback loop from social, external feedback, in terms of my internal feedback as well, I was like, yeah, this is going great, I'm getting much bigger. But with it, there was a lot of fat amassing on my body, and it was because I was doing a lot of weight training as well. What happens when you do a lot of strength training is the fat spreads, your fat distribution gets really efficient in the sense that you don't store fat in one place so much as you do everywhere, and the fat hides everywhere when you're weight training. And so for me, that really caught up with me. And one of the first things that I would have done is get myself out of the gym. In fact, when I had my kind of big breakthrough, as I mentioned in the summer of 2015, I lost about 25 pounds in 3 months or so. I cut my weight training back from about 5 to 6 times per week, and then cardio on top of that as well after the weight training, to maybe 3 sessions or 4 sessions. And again, my results really skyrocketed, and that was because I turned my attention to nutrition. So I'd have got out the gym, stopped focusing on the exercise so much, and focused on the nutrition. Now you guys know, and you can foresee a lot of what I'm about to share here, but it really is this low-fat plant-based approach that really has served me well. When I first went vegan as well, back in 2015, I had an awful lot of white rice, an awful lot of still heavily processed foods, but of course without the animal products. So there's an argument to be made that was several steps ahead of what I was doing previously. Absolutely, there's no question. But for me, where I really started to unlock everything that I'm teaching now is when I stumbled across Dr. John McDougall's work in the form of the Starch Solution. And then that led me down this kind of natural plant foods, this whole food plant-based approach path shortly thereafter. So I still lost a bunch of weight when I first went plant-based, when I first went vegan, but I wasn't eating as well as I do nowadays by any stretch of the imagination. So it was switching from the likes of white rice to brown rice. It was cutting out the mock meats. I was having lots of tofu and tempeh as well, that sort of thing when I first started. And I think these were great things in helping me transition. But when I started to really dial down on the fiber-rich, whole grains, the tubers like the potatoes, the sweet potatoes, the fruits, the veggies as well, limit the processed stuff, that's when my results really kicked in. And that is really kind of formed the basis of the protocols that I now share in my videos. So yeah, I'd be focusing a lot on whole foods, even more than I do now. You guys will see me in videos now, and I'll have the whole wheat bread, I'll have the bran flakes with my cereal in the morning. Again, these are still, can most certainly be part of a healthy and weight loss encouraging diet, so I don't want to get you guys freaking out about something like whole wheat bread or whole wheat pasta. They still can help you lose weight, but I would make them a much smaller part of my diet. I'd make them a very small part of my diet, focus on those whole foods. Another big thing that I do is I would not eat out. I would literally go about 6 months with not eating out. And I know some of you go like, Ryan, you got to have a life, man. You got to have a social life. For me, that's fine. I can still have a social life, but I can say no to some things. You're allowed to say no to some things. Some people get so peer pressured into things that they'll go and eat out. They'll still have that bottle of wine on a Friday. But if you're on a weight loss plateau right now, if you're desperately looking to get control of this stuff, I really suggest that you have a sacrificial period, and that's what I'd do. I'd have like 6 months where I just didn't eat out, and actually that's one of the big things when I was really focused on improving my acne, and this all happened in roughly the same period. It's maybe a couple of months later I really turned my attention to acne, but I didn't eat out for like 3 or 4 months, and my skin was amazing as a result, because before that I'd take lots of good nutrition steps, lots of plant foods, my skin would get better, and then I'd go and eat out, there'd be a bunch of oil on the food, maybe I'd have some processed stuff, bang, eruption the next day. It was almost kind of 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So I committed to like 3 or 4 months where I said, listen, I'm not going to eat out, right? You're not going to eat out. And it made a great deal of difference to me. It really did. And certainly from a weight loss point of view, that's something I would advise as well. You just have this sacrificial period of time. And remember that nothing is eternal here. You're not doing this forever. So it's not like I'm saying to you guys, never eat out again. But listen, if you're desperately looking to get a hold of this stuff, it's not only the meal out that can mess you up. This is the big problem. Some people, they'll have that meal out, then it turns into dessert. Not only do they make bad food choices in the meal, but they have a dessert on top of that. Maybe they have a beer or a glass of wine with the meal. Maybe then it rolls on to the next day. Maybe then they make it a weekly habit whereas it wasn't before, So just committing to that period of time where I wouldn't eat out, I think that would serve me so well. Wasn't a big problem for me because back in my student days, as you guys know, as you guys can imagine rather, I didn't have a big budget for eating out, but I'd still do it. I remember going to Pizza Hut buffet and that sort of thing. So I'd eat cleanly like 5 or 6 days of the week, then I'd go to like the Pizza Hut buffet, and I'd mess up my results so much. And so for me, this was prior, of course, to being vegan. But for me, you know, so I say I was eating well. I was eating what I thought at the time was clean foods. I mean, lots of chicken and rice and like the bodybuilder diet, broccoli and all that sort of stuff. The protein shakes, tuna sandwiches, all of that stuff. And so for me, you know, I'd be eating quote unquote cleanly, or my version of clean back then at least, and I'd screw up my results by going and treating myself to a Pizza Hut buffet, and maybe that led over into, you know, Domino's the next day and Ben & Jerry's ice cream. You guys know about my Domino's and Ben & Jerry's stories by now. And so for me, those things were like holding me back. But going with this period, like, I'm going to be tough, I'm going to be ruthless. It takes a committed, industrious person to commit to that, to say that they're going to do that and lay that groundwork with their friends, their social circle, and say, listen, I'm not going to do this sort of stuff for a while. I'll still hang out with you in this regard, but I'm not going to be partaking in this just for a period of time. That takes a tough person. But again, when you get clinical with yourself, it raises your standards, it raises your behavior. It's amazing, that ripple effect, that knock-on effect into other areas of your life, but certainly from a health and weight loss point of view. That sort of clinical commitment takes your conviction to a new level. You start getting really serious about this stuff. You start treating weight loss and healthy eating like a duty and an obligation, rather than just like a fleeting hobby, rather than something you're trying as a means to an end to get to a certain finish line. You start really building it into your character, your personality, and your belief system, your value system, and that's what gets you long-term results. So definitely I'd commit to that period of sacrifice, and I'd be okay with that. I'd get away from the instant gratification. I'd stop using food to feel good. And that was a big thing as well, like so much emotional eating. I think one big thing that I would do, which has really helped me get control of my emotional eating issues. I was eating so much out of boredom at uni because, frankly, for me, there was times at university where I found it very unstimulating, very unfulfilling. And one big thing that helped me, without my kind of purposely doing this actually, was going into the world of work after graduation. It forced me to have a little bit of responsibility, manage all these tasks, and actually spend more of my day actually physically doing something, and mentally rather doing something, rather than previously I was procrastinating a lot. I was having a lot of leisure time as well. That would allow me to think about food more. I'd turn to food and use it as a tool to numb that boredom, to feel good, as a little pick-me-up, as a little reward. And so something that really helped me get control of that was having a bit more responsibility in my life, having things to do. So a big change I would make if I was starting from scratch is I'd make sure that I had things going on in my life, whether it was sport, whether it was a job. Even if it was back in my university days, I'd get myself a part-time job, not only for the income there, not only for the work experience, but also so I didn't have that time where I was sitting around procrastinating. That's a massive change that I would make, and one that people don't really think of with weight loss. But again, the more you've got going on in your life, the less chance you have of thinking about food, the less chance you have of emotionally eating. So that would be huge. Now, in terms of the nutrition itself, obviously this is so key. It's this low-fat, plant-based approach. Whole foods, as I mentioned earlier on, really, really important. I'd start my day with oatmeal, and this is something that I largely did throughout my weight loss journey, so this isn't groundbreaking stuff to any of you who are familiar with my story, but I'd start my day with oatmeal. For lunch, I'd have a rice and beans type dish, and it would be brown rice, absolutely, with black beans or chickpeas or lentils or something like that. I'd throw in as well some, one thing I'd learned, I was really actually quite poor with vegetables for quite a long period after initially going vegan, which you guys will think, what? Naughty, Ryan, naughty, you're not perfect, how naughty. But at first I really wasn't perfect, especially my leafy greens. I didn't get many of them in, and I didn't get many of the, like you guys will often see me having, I love my courgettes nowadays. For my lunch later on, I'm going to make a lovely lentil marinara. I'm going to throw some carrots in there, some onion, some broccoli and whatnot. Aubergine, I love. Eggplant for my US friends. And so for me, vegetables have become a much larger part of my diet. Previously, I was so kind of in this starch solution belief system, and so kind of not health focused as well. I was really, really weight loss focused at first, and it was in time that I cared more and more about health and whatnot, and I was reading the starch solution. So I was so focused on starches and whatnot that I kind of neglected a lot of the veggies as well. But I'd have a lot more veggies in my diet, so I'd make sure that with my rice and beans lunches, I would have, some zucchini, some courgette thrown in there. Again, the dark leafy greens, so amazing from a health point of view as well as weight loss. I'd make sure I had some veggies in there. I'd have a green side salad. That's stuff that I now do. You guys see me do nowadays. They're part of my protocol nowadays. But I wasn't doing those back then, admittedly. I wasn't doing those as much as I ought to have been, I think, back then, from both a weight loss and a health perspective. So more veggies. My evening meal, you guys can predict this, knowing me well at this stage, potatoes. I'd have more potatoes. Potatoes incredible for weight loss. Other steps that I'd take, I'd limit those fats. So the nuts, the seeds, the avocados, and actually this is something I did successfully, largely thanks to Dr. McDougall's teaching. I'd cut out a lot of the nuts, the seeds, the avocados. These things, again, I stress, they still can be part of a healthy, most certainly a healthy diet, but a weight loss encouraging diet. They absolutely can. But the more you have those to the neglect of the low fat alternatives, the more I find, as a rule of thumb, it will slow down your weight loss. And so for me, when I had my little experiments with the fats and whatnot, I did think that my weight loss slowed down during that period. And that's very much kind of proven true. Now in hindsight, I can reflect and think, yeah, it was low fat that served me well. It's low fat that serves my clients well. It's low fat that the scientific literature seems to overwhelmingly advocate here. So not, you know, they're still acknowledging the benefits of those fats, the nuts, the seeds, the avocados and whatnot. And as you guys now know, I eat lots of those. I introduce loads of those into my daily diet nowadays because I'm at my weight loss goal. I don't want to lose any more weight and I want to reap the rewards of those healthy fats. So by no means is this me telling you guys to cut out those healthy fats completely. And for some people, they can be really beneficial for satiation in other areas as well, in terms of hormones and whatnot. For me, one downside of actually limiting my fat intake was my strength went down in the gym. As you guys know, I'm not a bodybuilding type, but I do enjoy my weight training back from those years where I was doing it so heavily. And so for me, actually, I noticed my strength going down when I limit those fats. So for me, throughout my weight loss journey, I still included those fats, but I made them a really small part of my diet. I'd just have like half an avocado with my rice and beans dishes, maybe a handful of like chopped up walnuts on my oatmeal in the morning, but I wasn't going crazy with it. I wasn't having as many as I now do by any stretch of the imagination. So whole foods, and in terms of exercise, I'd still do the weight training. Weight training is actually seriously underrated from a weight loss perspective. That afterburn effect with weight training is really exceptional versus some forms of cardio. So weight training, really, really great. And for toning up as well, something that's important if you have a kind of a particular kind of physique goal, let's say. So for me, I'd still do the weight training. I'd obviously cut it back, and I would definitely introduce more cardio. As I've mentioned to you guys, I did cardio on top of my weight training, but it wasn't a great deal. And then it was also very much an intermittent thing. It wasn't something, you know, I'd have these sessions where I'd have these periods of time, maybe let's say a month or two, where I'd be really focused on the cardio because I wanted the scales to go down, and, you know, I was coming from that classic point of view, okay, you got to do more, you got to eat less to get the scale to budge. So, but that would never really last because I was doing it on a darn, excuse my language, treadmill in the gym, which is, for me personally, is never much fun. And so something that I've really enjoyed this summer is getting outside a bit more. Started playing tennis again. I played a lot of tennis in my childhood. Started running again as well for the first time in like 7 or 8 years properly, and outdoors. And for me, that's been, pardon the pun, a breath of fresh air. It's been so amazing. And I can see myself, the more I do that stuff, leaning up as well, even though I don't want to lose any more weight. And so for me, I would definitely get more of the cardio in. Cardio can be incredible from a weight loss perspective, so more of the running. So I do my kind of 3 or 4 weekly weight training sessions, which are what I've done for the past couple of years, but I'd also throw in a couple of runs as well, which is something that I've only really introduced this summer, not to stoke weight loss, but personally for my enjoyment. I find it so therapeutic to move my body in that regard and improve my fitness. And so for me, that's been so fun. As I say, a breath of fresh air. And so I'd definitely introduce a little bit of cardio, a bit of running, maybe a weekly tennis session if I was looking to lose weight again. So that's it, guys. I could go on and on and on, but I don't want to do that. I want you guys to actually take some bite-sized stuff from this video. I hope it's really served you well. If you're looking to delve deeper with the strategies that have served me so well for weight loss, you can get my blueprint for weight loss success, which is my first book, Natural Foods, The Only Diet You Need. I'll actually link it down below in the description box. Or you guys can simply head over to naturalweightlossmastery.com. Got a bunch of other resources there. But certainly to dive deep with the strategies that I've shared with you guys today, and familiarize yourself, with more of my story and the things that helped me, the tools and techniques that I then teach you guys in my videos, my book is a great place to start. So that's Natural Foods, The Only Diet You Need. As I say, I'll link it down below. If you're just running into me for the first time here, make sure you smash that little like button, subscribe if you're just running into me, as I say, and I'll catch you in the next video. All the best.